My parents insisted that I sack my best friend from my company and give his job to my cousin, who just came out of jail. They said if I didn't, they would tell people the truth about what happened in college. But nothing ever happened in college. They made up lies. They even had my cousin's girlfriend write a fake post and keep it ready to share online. My mom told me family comes before everything. Your friend can easily be replaced. My cousin came to my office and told the receptionist that he was the new HR manager. He had already printed a company shirt for himself and was walking around in it like he worked there. When I asked security to remove them, my mom started shouting in the parking lot, my son is a danger, and this company is hiding it for him. 8 clients heard everything. My whole family was outside my door, yelling and banging like they wanted to break it down. I just smiled. 10 days later, I'm 34. 8 years ago, me and my best friend Bobby started this distribution company from scratch. We help small businesses move their products across 3 different states. Bobby runs things as our coup. We started with nothing but one used truck, and now we have 42 people working for us and a whole warehouse. Bobby has been like a real brother to me since we were 14 years old. Patrick is related by blood. His mom, my Aunt Janet, raised him by herself, and when she got sick during our last year of high school, my parents brought him into our home. They were supposed to treat us both the same. Instead, they decided Patrick was the child they truly wanted. I got decent grades and never caused problems. Somehow that made me the dull disappointment they didn't care about. Patrick was the one who needed rescuing, required constant attention, deserved their endless support through every mess he made. Here's the part about family trauma everyone recognizes. It's that usual messed up situation where the kid, who does everything right, gets ignored. Meanwhile, the kid starting fires gets all the focus because he's having a hard time. In the background, Op is out here creating something major alongside his true brother Bobby. And his parents are thinking, but Patrick though, 20 years of being the steady one, and all it got him was being forgotten. That's how broken families work. They don't celebrate achievement. They hold it against you. Patrick spent time in prison 2 years ago for hurting someone. He beat another man so severely he stayed in the hospital almost a month. My parents went to see him every week, added money to his account, paid for his legal defense. When I suggested maybe he should deal with the results of his actions, my mother told me I lacked compassion, and that family sticks together regardless of what happens. 3 weeks in intensive care isn't just some fight outside a bar. That's attempted murder. But Op's parents acted like he received a traffic citation, weekly visits, money in his account, a paid attorney. Meanwhile, if Op probably crossed the street illegally in 2003, they'd still mention it during Thanksgiving dinner. Family supports family no matter what. Ma'am, your nephew almost ended someone's life completely. There should be a boundary somewhere, a clear line that can't be crossed. He got released 6 weeks back. Right away my parents started telling me Patrick needed employment from me. When I told them I'd think about a basic position if he cleared a background review and stayed out of trouble for 6 months, my father became furious. Accused me of handling my own relative like he was a lawbreaker. I pointed out that Patrick had been convicted of a crime. You're treating him like an offender. That's because legally he is one. The government has official records, and honestly Op was being extremely fair. Entry-level work, background screening, 6 months sober. That's not discipline. That's just normal employment standards. Plenty of companies wouldn't even accept Patrick's application. Op was giving him a chance to rebuild, and they responded as if he demanded Patrick crawl through shattered glass. Then their requests became more extreme. My mother called insisting Bobby had to leave. She claimed Bobby was preventing me from advancing, that Bobby only wanted his portion of profits, that Patrick could do Bobby's job more effectively because Patrick knew what loyalty meant. I told her she had lost her mind. Bobby and I constructed this whole operation as partners. Let me pause right there. She said Bobby has to go. The individual who helped construct this business from one beat-up truck, the 50% owner, and Patrick, recently released from incarceration, would make a better coup because he grasps loyalty. Ma'am, Patrick's latest demonstration of faithfulness was attacking an unknown person outside drinking establishment. That's aggression, not dedication. Bobby has worked alongside Op for 8 years, but sure, swap him out for the guy who creates polo shirts at his kitchen table. That's when she told me she would reveal what truly happened during my college years. I laughed because there's nothing to tell. I attended public university, earned my diploma, held down 2 jobs, finished with recognition. The most questionable thing I ever did was fail chemistry during my 2nd year. But she had a strategy. She informed me Patrick's girlfriend Leah had prepared a social media statement alleging I attacked her at a gathering in 2012. Leah and I have encountered each other precisely 2 times, both occasions at family events surrounded by multiple witnesses. But the post was completely prepared. My mother said if I didn't handle things properly regarding family, it goes public. She told me relatives come before everything and Bobby is not essential. I need everyone to truly absorb what happened here. This man's mother, the lady who brought him into this world, just threatened to help circulate a fabricated assault allegation to demolish his existence unless he lets go of his closest companion and turns over his enterprise to an individual with a violent history, his own mother. And she had this complete thing composed ahead of time, waiting to deploy it like a corporate announcement. Relatives come first. I guess relatives also bring invented criminal charges and coercion. This isn't family connection. This is criminal organization with a female leader. I ended the call. That took place Sunday. Thursday morning Patrick appeared in my entrance area wearing his self-made polo shirt. 20 minutes later my father walked in telling the person at reception, Amelia, that he was our new human resources director and required access to employee records. Amelia contacted me feeling uncertain. I instructed her to keep them waiting and I'd arrive in 10 minutes. Then I summoned Bobby to my workspace. Time to clarify why my relatives had just entered our business without invitation. What took place in that reception area intensified everything beyond what I expected. So Patrick arrives displaying his homemade craft project on his chest. Then Dad comes in announcing himself as HR director requesting confidential personnel files. Sir, you cannot simply appoint yourself to roles within organizations you have no ownership of. This is becoming performance art. And recognition to Amelia, the front desk employee, just attempting to perform her responsibilities, while this theatrical production unfolds around her workspace. She never agreed to participate in this situation. Update 1. Bobby and I walked down to the reception space together. I filled him in completely during our walk. His expression cycled through roughly 6 different reactions, finally arriving at absolute distaste by the moment we reached the stairs. Patrick occupied one of our waiting chairs like he had ownership rights. My father remained at Amelia's workspace, still demanding the employee contact list. Amelia's face showed pure relief upon seeing me. I instructed my father to move away from my receptionist's desk. He immediately launched into his argument about this being a family enterprise, and relatives possessing complete authority to participate. I pointed out he had never placed any of his own money into this company, had never completed one day of labor here, and his signature appeared on no legal paperwork. He responded that resulted from my choice to exclude my own parents. This is a family enterprise. Actually, it's not. It's Bobby and Ops Enterprise. Your name isn't recorded anywhere. You placed 0 funds. You contributed 0 labor hours. Yet somehow it's Ops' wrongdoing for distancing himself. That resembles me walking into Apple headquarters demanding partial ownership because my cousin's roommate previously purchased an iPhone. The sense of entitlement is genuinely astonishing. These individuals truly walked inside thinking they could simply claim possession of somebody else's 10 years of effort. Patrick stood and approached like we were about to exchange greetings and begin his employment. He expressed readiness to acquire knowledge and mentioned his expectation that Bobby would instruct him throughout the changeover period. Bobby laughed out loud. Just one forceful ha that reverberated throughout the space. Bobby responding with that solitary HA is sending me into another universe entirely. Not a soft chuckle, not a polite giggle, one solitary ha that echoed against the surfaces like a firearm discharge. That represents the laugh of someone who has absorbed the most irrational statement ever expressed, and his physical being simply spontaneously declined to accept it. Patrick genuinely said Bobby will prepare me during the changeover, as if Bobby would gladly transfer his personal position with enthusiasm. My friend, Bobby owns half of this organization. No changeover exists. That's when Patrick's entire attitude changed. He moved very close to Bobby and stated Bobby needed to recognize he was merely staff and employees could be exchanged. Bobby is 6 years more experienced than me and holds absolutely no tolerance for intimidation methods. He informed Patrick that he possessed 50% ownership of this company, and the sole individual facing replacement was whoever believed they could enter this building wearing a counterfeit polo shirt and begin issuing threats. Bobby delivered perfectly. The only person facing replacement was whoever thought they could walk in here with a fake polo and begin issuing threats. That's artistic expression. That's a quality phrase. That's the kind of statement you practice in the shower for half a year hoping you'll get the opportunity to deliver it. Except Bobby just created it spontaneously, because that's simply who he is. And Patrick genuinely attempted to intimidate a 40-year-old business owner by describing him as merely staff. Assess your surroundings, Patrick. Assess any environment whatsoever. My father inserted himself and stated this demonstrated exactly what he meant. He claimed Bobby had corrupted me against my own relatives. That Bobby was responsible for my absence from holiday gatherings. That Bobby had transformed me into somebody who would reject his own family connection. I asked if he was genuinely serious. I stopped attending celebrations, because every single occasion transformed into a Patrick crisis discussion where I was required to supply funds, or effort, or justifications for whatever his most recent emergency involved. Classic blame shifting. Target the outsider. It's not that your relatives are emotionally draining and dysfunctional. It's that Bobby manipulated your thinking, as if Bobby represents some type of charismatic leader instead of simply an individual who treats Op as an equal collaborator. And each holiday functioning as a Patrick emergency session is so accurate for households like this one. You can't even consume turkey without someone circulating a donation container for Patrick's newest catastrophe. That doesn't qualify as celebration. That's a shareholder assembly for unsuccessful venture. My father stated that represents what families do. They give things up for each other. He pointed out I had this thriving enterprise, while Patrick possessed nothing. And the appropriate Christian response was to distribute my good fortune. I questioned him regarding where his Christian values existed when Patrick placed a person in intensive medical care. Oh, now the conversation turns to Christian values. Now we're introducing religious principles into the corporate takeover. Share what you've been given, sir. Your nephew isn't seeking financial assistance. He's attempting to seize a business using fabricated assault accusations. And Op responding with where were your Christian values when Patrick placed a man in intensive care represents the type of conclusive response that terminates family gatherings permanently. You want to introduce moral standards into discussion? Fine. Let's genuinely examine moral standards. Let's observe how that approach functions. That's when circumstances intensified. Patrick pushed Bobby forcefully. A firm shift to the chest area. Bobby stumbled backwards, striking Amelia's desk. I positioned myself between them immediately and informed Patrick that if he made physical contact with anyone within my facility again, I would contact law enforcement, and his parole supervisor would receive an extremely comprehensive telephone conversation. Patrick just perpetrated physical assault while on supervised release in front of multiple witnesses inside a structure that almost certainly contained surveillance equipment because he couldn't tolerate feeling humiliated by a man who genuinely achieved his position through merit. This explains Patrick's original incarceration. The instant circumstances don't align with his preferences, he resorts to violence, and he just delivered up a complete argument on a perfect serving dish. Patrick retreated, but maintained his smile. He said proceed. Place that call and observe the outcome when Leah's statement becomes public. He informed me I had until Sunday to select the appropriate choice, or my public image would be demolished, and every one of my customers would recognize precisely what kind of individual I truly am. That smile is deeply disturbing. This individual just committed physical violence against someone, and he's displaying satisfaction because he believes his ultimate strategy, a completely false accusation, will protect him from consequences. He's positioned there resembling a cinema antagonist delivering a dramatic speech, while the protagonist has already positioned the explosive device. Patrick genuinely believes he maintains control in this situation. He possesses zero awareness of what's approaching. My father nodded along as if this represented an absolutely reasonable discussion. He claimed they preferred not to pursue this difficult approach, but I was compelling their hand. He stated all I needed to do was provide Patrick an opportunity, and reduce Bobby to a silent participant instead of coup, and all these difficulties would disappear. Father simply nodding along to extortion like they're negotiating purchase price for a pre-owned automobile. We don't desire to demolish your existence with manufactured accusations, child, but you're compelling us. That doesn't qualify as discussion. That qualifies as extortion. And they're performing this so informally, like they practiced this dialogue during transportation to your location. Simply reduce your closest companion's position, and surrender everything to the individual with violence in his background, and we'll eliminate these threats. I'm genuinely astonished at how completely at ease they feel behaving as criminals. I looked at my father and communicated that I required him to comprehend something with complete clarity. I expressed that I had invested the previous 15 years observing this household select Patrick ahead of me in every situation. I stated I had accepted my role as the secondary consideration. However, endangering my professional existence, and my business associate, with invented accusations crossed a boundary I never anticipated even from them. This instant carries enormous significance. 15 years of remaining unnoticed, of being the backup offspring, of witnessing Patrick receive rescue repeatedly, while he received neglect, and ultimately verbalizes it in front of witnesses. I made peace with being secondary. That statement carries profound sadness because it represents reality. He acknowledged long ago he would never hold primary importance. However, this particular action exceeded acceptable limits even for a household that had already exceeded limits on numerous previous occasions. My father claimed I was exaggerating, and that Leah's statement was merely protection. He stated after Patrick demonstrated his capabilities, they would remove all content, and we could advance collectively as a household. Merely protection. Manufactured assault accusations represent merely protection. Now they're literally arranging to demolish his public image, and they're presenting it like a rental deposit. Once Patrick demonstrates his value, we'll eliminate it. Oh, excellent. So after he successfully appropriates the enterprise he holds no qualifications to manage, then you'll discontinue threatening your remaining offspring. Father of the Year recognition right here. 8 of my workforce members had assembled near the warehouse entrance observing this entire situation. 3 customers remained in the parking zone. My mother pulled up operating her Buick precisely as I prepared to reply. She exited and proceeded directly toward me clutching her phone. She communicated Leah awaited her instruction. She communicated all I needed to do was confirm agreement, and no individual would experience harm. Mother arriving like organized crime leader with Leah positioned for action. All you must do is confirm agreement, and nobody gets harmed. Ma'am, this represents your child, not a hostage scenario. However, in her perception, it absolutely is a hostage scenario. She's holding his public image captive demanding payment of let me verify, terminating his closest companion, and surrendering his enterprise to an individual with a criminal record. And she expressed this facing customers and staff members. This woman has completely departed from rational thinking. I smiled. I genuinely smiled because this represented the instant I had anticipated. Oh, we're about to examine this situation now. That expression, that's the expression of an individual who has spent time preparing for this precise instant. Op didn't experience panic. He didn't become paralyzed. He smiled. Because these individuals walked directly into a snare they didn't even recognize existed. Let's proceed. Update 2. Alright. Numerous events have occurred since my previous communication, and my relatives have currently entered complete crisis mode. When my mother appeared clutching her phone prepared to notify Leah, I instructed her to proceed. Publish it immediately. I can wait. She displayed confusion and questioned whether I comprehended what I was expressing. I communicated I comprehended completely, and she should execute her strategy. Publish it. I can wait. 4 words. 4 words that transformed everything. One could perceive the audio interruption in Mother's cognitive processing. She arrived convinced she possessed a weapon, and Op simply responded proceed. I challenge you. That represents the energy of someone who has been transporting a retaliation strategy concealed, awaiting the ideal instant. Mother genuinely believed he would collapse, and alternatively he exposed her empty threat accompanied by a smile. Here's what my relatives didn't recognize. I have spent years preparing for something resembling this. Not this exact scenario specifically, but something. Patrick has represented an unstable threat throughout my complete adult existence, and my guardians have facilitated every detonation. I understood eventually they would attempt to employ him against my interests. I simply didn't anticipate the particular method. This explains why you should never undervalue the calm child who achieved satisfactory academic results and avoided misconduct. While Patrick created turmoil externally, Op was developing backup strategies. Years of observing his household disintegrate taught him one lesson. Eventually, they will direct their attention toward you. Consequently, he made preparations. This demonstrates strategic planning at an exceptional level. He lacked specific knowledge about their approach, but he recognized they would attempt something. Therefore, he achieved readiness for every possibility. 3 years in the past, I initiated documentation practices. Each household text message requesting funds for Patrick. Every voice message where my mother imposed emotional pressure regarding my absence from gatherings. Every instance my father characterized me as self-absorbed for constructing a life that didn't center around extracting Patrick from difficulties, all preserved and duplicated across multiple storage locations. This individual has been assembling evidence files for 3 complete years. While they were leaving guilt-inducing voice messages and dispatching monetary request texts, he was selecting save repeatedly. That doesn't indicate excessive caution. That demonstrates behavioral pattern recognition. When maturation occurs within a dysfunctional household, you learn to preserve evidence because you recognize your statements will undergo distortion, your recollections will face interrogation, and you'll require verification. Op comprehended the necessary preparation. More significantly, Amelia had been discreetly capturing video footage on her mobile device from the instant my father entered demanding staff documentation. She captured everything. Patrick endangering Bobby. Patrick pushing Bobby. My father asserting authority over my commercial enterprise. My mother arriving accompanied by her blackmail ultimatum. Every element. Distinct audio and visual documentation. Amelia the receptionist represents the most valuable participant. The authentic one. While everyone focused on the unfolding conflict, she was calmly documenting every element. That exceeds simple instinct. That demonstrates absolute allegiance. She perceived irrationality enter through the entrance, and promptly recognized this requires documentation, for legal purposes. Provide Amelia salary increase. Provide Amelia additional compensation. Provide Amelia designated parking location featuring her name displayed. I informed my mother that if Leah distributed that manufactured accusation, I would submit a defamation lawsuit targeting Leah, file a harassment grievance regarding Patrick, and pursue physical assault charges based on the documented visual evidence we possessed. I communicated I would additionally forward the video documentation to Patrick's parole supervisor and allow them to determine if threatening commercial proprietors and perpetrating physical assault breached his release conditions. He presented the complete retaliatory strategy within one continuous statement: defamation legal action, harassment grievance, assault charges, parole conditions violation notification. Every individual maneuver thoroughly planned. Mother arrived convinced she controlled all advantageous elements, and Op simply overturned the playing surface and exposed he possessed unbeatable resources throughout. You can attempt to blackmail someone, however perhaps verify they don't possess visual documentation of your illegal activities initially. My mother's facial expression transformed. She directed her gaze toward Amelia, still grasping her telephone. She examined my father, subsequently Patrick. She communicated I was presenting false confidence. You're presenting false confidence. The ultimate desperate utterances of someone who has just recognized their defeat. She's examining her environment, questioning hold on. Were the antagonists captured on recording at this present moment? Yes, indeed, you are. And you have maintained this role for the preceding hour. The refusal to acknowledge reality remains powerful. However, the proof remains more powerful. I extracted my mobile device and displayed a message previously drafted to legal counsel. I had consulted 14 days earlier when their threats commenced. I informed her the sole action required from me was activation of transmission. A previously prepared communication to legal representation, positioned and ready. One-button activation distant from comprehensive legal warfare. This individual came thoroughly equipped. He entered that reception area keeping his finger positioned over the initiation controls. While they occupied themselves delivering threats, he had previously simulated every potential result. That exceeds intelligent planning. That represents the outcome when maturation involves continuously protecting yourself against your own relatives. Patrick lost emotional control. He began shouting that I had constantly considered myself superior to him, that I had deserted him during his period requiring family connection, that my sole concern involved financial resources. He stated I was responsible for his incarceration because I declined to offer him employment years previously, and he needed to commit desperate actions to maintain existence. Ah, certainly, the recognizable, your fault and dysfunctional discourse. Patrick assaulted someone so severely, they required 3 weeks of hospital care. Yet somehow Op bears responsibility for not offering employment 5 years previously. The psychological contortions required for this reasoning. He needed to commit desperate actions to maintain existence. Sir, you didn't appropriate food provisions to feed your household. You attacked another human being. That action didn't stem from necessity. That action stemmed from fury. And attributing responsibility to the sole relative who has actually organized his existence successfully explains exactly why Patrick's life situation remains disastrous. I communicated to him that I didn't provide employment opportunities 5 years previously because he took money from Aunt Janet's personal bag while she received end-of-life care. I communicated I observed him remove $40 from a dying woman who had devoted everything to raising him, and I determined at that moment he would never gain employment within my organization. Wait, Patrick stole resources from his dying aunt, the woman who devoted herself to raising him individually, while she received hospice services. $40 from a woman approaching her final moments. And Op observed this occurrence and never disclosed it because Janet pleaded with him to maintain silence. He has been protecting that confidential information for many years, preserving Patrick's public image. And at the instant these individuals attempted to demolish his existence, he ultimately released the information. That doesn't constitute betrayal. That represents a person who exhausted justifications for protecting someone who never earned protection. My parents possessed no knowledge regarding that incident. I never informed them because Aunt Janet urged me to maintain silence before her death. She communicated Patrick experienced illness and required assistance, not condemnation. I respected that request for many years. However, standing within my reception area observing them attempt to demolish everything I constructed, I reached the limit of protecting Patrick's reputation. Janet requested Op to preserve Patrick's reputation, despite Patrick stealing from her during her final days, and Op honored this request for many years out of respect for a dying woman's final wish. That demonstrates the character of Op. faithful beyond reasonable measure, maintaining confidential information that wasn't his responsibility, protecting an individual who would never offer protection in exchange. However, every person experiences a threshold, and observing your guardians attempt to blackmail you with completely fabricated criminal allegations tends to accelerate arrival at that threshold quite rapidly. My father questioned whether that account was accurate. Patrick offered no response. My mother attempted to shift the discussion. She communicated perhaps their approach was incorrect. Perhaps we could engage in mature conversation. She questioned whether we could relocate to a private area and examine potential solutions. Now she desires mature conversation. Now following the threats, following the blackmail, following arriving clutching her telephone prepared to demolish her son's reputation, perhaps our approach was incorrect represents the most extreme understatement available. Your approach wasn't merely incorrect. You perpetrated numerous illegal actions in view of witnesses and recording equipment. No confidential discussion exists capable of resolving this situation. I responded negatively. I instructed them to depart, or I would summon law enforcement for unlawful presence. I granted them deadline until Monday to definitively confirm to any individuals they had contacted that no incident occurred during my college period or legal proceedings would commence. They departed. However, Saturday, I received a text communication from Aunt Janet's former neighbor, Gavin. He informed me my parents and Patrick had visited inquiring regarding me, questioning if he remembered anything questionable from my earlier years. They were constructing a case against me. They weren't retreating. They're progressing from residence to residence attempting to discover damaging information regarding OP. Similar to investigative professionals, similar to criminal investigators. These individuals were captured in the act possessing visual documentation of their illegal conduct, and rather than withdrawing, they're currently traversing the community seeking any potential weapon for employment. That doesn't demonstrate determination. That demonstrates detachment from reality. They genuinely believe, if they discover some unverified allegation from 2 decades ago, it will neutralize the footage of them perpetrating blackmail and physical assault during the previous week. Final update, 10 days. That duration represented the complete period required for my entire family structure to disintegrate. Tuesday, I transmitted Amelia's video documentation to Patrick's parole supervisor accompanied by a formal statement regarding the physical attack on Bobby. Wednesday, law enforcement representatives appeared at my parents' residence. Patrick wasn't taken into custody. However, his parole supervisor mandated compulsory twice-weekly reporting sessions. Ops stopped employing defensive strategies and initiated offensive operations. Video documentation transmitted. Parole supervisor notified. Law enforcement presence at the residence. Patrick might not currently be incarcerated. However, he's now positioned under detailed observation. Each action monitored. Each reporting session documented. One additional mistake and his situation concludes. The individual who entered that reception area believing he was about to assume operations manager responsibilities is currently explaining to his parole supervisor why he committed physical assault while being recorded. Same day, my legal representative transmitted a formal cease communication to Leah regarding the defamation publication. The correspondence explicitly communicated that distributing fabricated accusations would result in immediate legal proceedings. Leah experienced panic and contacted my mother in distress, stating she never actually desired to distribute it. She was simply providing Patrick assistance. Leah crumbled immediately. The instant official legal documentation arrived, she was communicating via telephone in distress to mother, stating she never wanted to participate. Simply providing Patrick assistance. Young woman, that assistance would have constituted a serious crime. You were preparing to distribute completely fabricated assault allegations, and you characterized that as providing assistance. The complete arrangement of playing cards is collapsing because none of these individuals genuinely considered the outcomes of their behaviors. My mother arrived at my workplace Thursday. Amelia declined to permit her passage beyond the reception zone. She remained standing there 20 minutes pleading to speak with me, stating this entire situation represented misunderstanding. They simply wanted to provide Patrick assistance. I was demolishing the family unit over nothing. Amelia documented that interaction as well. Amelia communicated not on this occasion, maintained that boundary for 20 minutes, while mother remained standing there pleading, and documented it again. Amelia is currently constructing a visual documentary at this stage, a comprehensive film collection. Mother's characterizing it as misunderstanding. Ma'am, you appeared clutching your telephone prepared to notify a manufactured accusation publication. That doesn't qualify as misunderstanding. That qualifies as conspiracy, and you're documented on recording yet again. How do you individuals consistently disregard recording equipment? Frey. I transmitted the video documentation to every extended family member I possessed contact information for. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't communicated with in numerous years. Brief message explaining my guardians attempted to coerce me into terminating my business collaborator using completely fabricated assault allegations as negotiation tool. By Saturday, my parents' communication devices were experiencing continuous alerts. Family members demanded explanations. My uncle characterized my father as a humiliation. My mother's sister communicated she constantly recognized they excessively protected Patrick, but never imagined they would descend to blackmail tactics. Sunday morning, all 3 individuals arrived at my residence. My mother in distress. My father shouting before I accessed the entrance. Patrick exhibiting an expression suggesting he wanted to end my existence. My father screamed that I had subjected them to public humiliation. He communicated I had destroyed Patrick's recovery process. He communicated I no longer qualified as his offspring. My mother repeatedly stated family safeguards family, that I had turned against them. They only pursued these actions because they held love for Patrick. They arrived at his residence following all previous events. Still shouting, still expressing distress, still portraying themselves as victims. You humiliated us. No, you humiliated yourselves while being recorded. You destroyed Patrick's recovery. Patrick destroyed his personal recovery opportunity when he committed physical assault while under parole supervision. You no longer qualify as my offspring. Honestly, that might represent the most beneficial gift father ever provided him. Liberation from this chaotic situation. I positioned myself within my entrance and expressed the authentic reality. For 34 years, I observed them select Patrick ahead of me continuously. I applied greater effort, maintained proper conduct, constructed something genuine, and none of that held significance, because Patrick required rescue, and I didn't. They didn't attempt to assist Patrick in obtaining employment. They attempted to appropriate what I had constructed and transfer ownership to him. 34 years captured within that entrance. Everything he never expressed. Everything he suppressed internally. Each occasion he observed Patrick receive attention, receive support, receive affection, while he experienced neglect for demonstrating excessive stability, excessive achievement, excessive independence. Patrick needed rescue, and I didn't. That represents the complete tragedy. He never required rescue, consequently they never actually observed his existence whatsoever. My mother communicated that characterization was inaccurate. She communicated they held equal affection for both of us. I questioned why she never endangered Patrick's public image when he beat an individual to the edge of death. Why unconditional support exclusively pertained to him. No response. I closed my entrance. They continued shouting outside for 10 minutes before a neighbor threatened to contact law enforcement. Family safeguards family, she communicated to me. She was accurate. I simply ultimately directed my safeguarding toward my personal family membership. That concluding expression no. Family safeguards family. She was accurate. I simply ultimately directed my safeguarding toward my personal family membership. He transformed the complete framework. Throughout numerous years, family safeguards family indicated sacrifice your personal well-being for Patrick. It indicated deplete your assets, harm your connections, facilitate every catastrophe. However, OP recognized his personal welfare holds significance as well. His existence, his enterprise, his upcoming opportunities, his selected family, Bobby, Amelia, his workforce members, the individuals who genuinely demonstrated their presence for him. He selected his own well-being ultimately, and that action doesn't represent selfishness. That represents essential